We are live with another Elite Coach Live. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Let us know if you're watching this live or on replay. Just drop a comment. But Brendan, how are we doing first and foremost, mate?
Doing really well, thanks, Steve. Yeah, good to see you, and thanks for joining us, everybody, this morning.
How's the week gone, mate? What's the snapshot of the week? A busy week into the life of Brendan Chapman, mate. Give us a sneak preview, mate.
Insight. Yeah, it's been a good week overall, and still got the rest of today as well. So it's gonna finish strong.
Yeah.
Exercise wise has gone well. I actually did a double session yesterday. You'll be impressed to hear,
mate. It's a good job I'm sat down.
Yeah, but I'll give you the. I'm not going to boast because both sessions were sort of 30% of a full session, so I actually did like 2/3 of one. But I just found myself really time poor yesterday on the hold to one of these phone line things, and so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do a load of pull-ups and some conditioning stuff in my home gym, and then got the kids into bed, and then shot down to the actual gym yesterday evening and did a nice run, actually. Sort of it was like my speed day, and did a bunch of 800s, got up to 16 Ks per hour for the 800s, which for me is actually quite a decent effort. Mm-hmm. So that was that, and it's been a good week on an SCE front. Really interesting. We've got some new people joining the business soon in the next few months, which is always great. Every time you bring new people in, you bring new energy, you bring new ideas, and ultimately that's what you want with new people. You don't just want somebody who's going to do a job. You want somebody who's going to bring the noise, as they say, and challenge convention. Yeah. So that's good, and everything else is fine as well. What about you?
Yeah, to be fair, this week for me has been like a, I don't know, a bit of I don't know if a breakthrough week or just a realization of all of the good habits that I've started to nail down. So my morning routine is on point for me now. Very, very like big drastic changes, but starting to make a big difference. Things like journaling evening on the morning, setting out the stall of what I want to get achieved that day, getting my eyes on the outcomes, and making sure, just doing the basics. I've really just gone back to basics and went, right, what's the compound effect here? Basic, making sure I'm getting about 7 or 8 portions of fruit and veg a day, drinking 4 and a bit liters of water a day, getting 8 hours of, the stuff that on the surface is not sexy, but put them all together, you get some incredible effects. So yeah, I'm feeling really good at the moment. It's quite good. It's good. I'm ready to tackle anything that comes my way, which is always a good thing, mate. It's always
excellent. Yeah, that's really, really good. Excellent.
So we've got a few people joining us as well. Facebook user, they're always about. Morning. Marie's in the mix as well, and Heather. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So, guys, today we are talking about just how we kind of touched on it last week. And for those guys that didn't catch us last week, we were talking about power training, but we touched on how people go specific too soon, and it kind of led to us discussing and thinking about our own training. And my ethos is very similar to Brendan's, in the fact that actually you should be a specialist generalist. So what do we mean by that? I mean, I coined that term from Nick Ward, and I'm sure Nick nicked it from somewhere else, and so on and so forth. But it's kind of been very, very good in lots of different areas. And that's kind of your GPP phase. And I think in the world of S&C and coaching these days, it seems to be really underappreciated by a lot of people. I don't know why. Possibly because it's not the sexy stuff, but arguably I'd say it is. I mean, I like that GPP phase is just an opportunity to get some heavy sled drags in, some heavy farmers walks, being able to master your pull-ups, get your baseline strength levels up. That general prep phase, for me is just awesome because there's no pressure on competing. There's no specificity type stuff that we're working on. It's just getting stuck into it and just getting good at a lot of different things in one go. You know, so, and I know that's, and your training's kind of touched on it there, because Brendan's like, we say he's time poor, but he's just because he's that busy. Training has got to be, I've got to move well. I've got to be strong in various different ways. And I've got half an hour. I've got 20 minutes. I've got 2 20-minute blocks today and stuff like that. So, but I just want to go back to your, where you started with your training, mate, because obviously you come from like martial arts background and stuff like that. So actual GPP is kind of the cornerstone of that old school running around Asherton Wrestling Club, isn't it? On them rock hard floors with blisters on your feet. You know, do you want to take us back to that and your exposure to actually just getting good at the general stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Firstly, that term, specialist generalist, and I would take that further and say becoming a specialist in general training. I think really the person I'd attribute that to is Kelvin Giles, who, for those of you who may not know, Kelvin was our Lifetime Achievement Award winner in 2020. Dan John won it last year in 2021, which, on a tangent, it's again really cool to see Dan John. Dan John met the mayor of his town in Utah, all about his lifetime achievement, and he had the award and all of that, and it really, really touched me, because it's just, you know, it's brilliant to see that recognition for people who have spent, in Dan's case and in Kelvin's case, 40 plus years becoming specialists in general training. And I think they would be absolutely fine with that term being attributed to them. They have spent that long and they are specialist experts in general training. So I think the martial arts days were great because it just gave me a massive vocabulary of movement that, you know, at the time I probably underappreciated. Body weight stuff, mobility drills, and you're right, like going around, running around those Asherton wrestling gyms and doing seminars all over the world, attending seminars all over the world as a student, and so on. You get exposed to so many things, and at the time you sort of think that they are specific, but they're really, really general. You know, bear crawling is general training. And I think that's, when you think back, I'm sure everybody on the line can think of a coach or a person who coached them, may have been an informal coach, that they underappreciated. And now looking back, you're like, yeah, that really was breakthrough for me. And a lot of this stuff was like that, because the art of coaching here, we're talking about the art of being a well-rounded athlete, but the art of being a well-rounded coach is being able to package general, basic, quality movement in a way that, as Nick Ward does say, inspires, engages, excites, and enables your athletes, your clients. So a bear crawl for martial arts and a bear crawl for tennis and a bear crawl for general pop, they're all bear crawls, but the way that you package it, the way that you present it could be quite different. And that's where the art of coaching comes in. So, yeah, I think for me, it is the sexy stuff, because you can drill so deep into general preparation that it really does become engaging for your clients, for your athletes, for your teams. If you think creatively around general preparation, it's not just squats and deadlifts, presses and pulls. It's not just sprints. And, you know, there's so many things in there. And the way that you string together a session to make it relevant and exciting and productive for your clients. That's the art of coaching. But you know, if we were doing a webinar here that was titled, "What do the world's best coaches all do?" One of the top things that I would put into that would be they all focus on basic general training 90% of the time, maybe more. And if you look at the best people out there that are doing this and are still doing it 40 years later, but even just top of their game, in 10 years into their career, the commonality is they all do this stuff, basic general training, exceptionally well. And they do not deviate from that much at all, frankly. They might package it for boxing, for netball, what have you, but the basis of their program is general training. And I think the one thing that served me well, Steve, was buying into that early. Like I got that quite early, fortunately. And I give credit to the people that mentored me, that taught me that just laid that down. And I just got it. It made sense. And people like Mike Boyle in the States there, when I went over there to work with Mike, again, championing really good quality fundamentals, basic training, and as a result, rolling out great movers, great athletes, great people from the ages of 8 to 88, really good. And the first probably 3 to 5 years of my career as a strength coach, not on the martial arts side, and even now, frankly, I don't think I've deviated much at all, but just being able to see different body shapes doing the same things well, coaching a squat and seeing thousands of reps, tens of thousands of repetitions of movements like squats, pushes, pulls, presses, all the different mobility movements. That's how you become a specialist in general training and a true expert coach, when you can get all different body types, from 7-foot basketballers to 5'2" MMA fighters and so on and so forth, moving really well. And you can adapt your environment and your exercises and whatever you're doing to get the best of those people with a scoliosis, people with kyphosis, people with lower back injury. How do you adapt and get those people pushing, pulling, bracing, twisting, rotating, hinging, squatting, lunging, all of them doing it really, really well? And that's it. And still having fun and still being inspired and empowered by the training that you're doing. Yeah, that's the art of coaching. Because nobody wants to come in and do the same stuff every day. Variation is a critical factor in good quality programming, but it's variation on a theme, isn't it, Steve? I think. And that's the key thing here.
Yeah, and I think that variation and the key thing with GPPs is having those themes running right the way through, and that comes back to your philosophy and obviously the end goal. What we're not saying is just do everything, in a general prep phase. You want it to support what you're going to be doing further down the line. But those themes and setting your stall out is really, really important. But because once you've got that, you know the boundaries, what you can and can't do, saying, right, I want to add a bit of novelty. I want to add that variation. So instead of just a slow sled drag, we're going to go faster. We're going to go explosive pulls. Then we're going to mix it up with some different exercises in between. We're going to have a bit of fun, bit of reaction stuff. I do simple stuff like do sled drags with the kids, and then just chucking the ball off the wall and just working on that bit of reaction, a bit of fun. They have no idea what they're doing. They just have a bit of fun. They just catch the ball or throw the ball higher or stuff like that. You know, give them different targets. But for me, that's part of their physical prep in terms of coordination and organizing the body and proprioception work and stuff as well. So,
and like good point and good question from Heather here. You know, do you allow some fun stuff, not too much sport specific, to mix it up, keep motivation as well? And I would say my answer to that, Heather, would be that I'd always allow fun stuff. It's not off season, it's not in season. It's a really, really relevant question because, you know, many years ago, I was doing a presentation at a conference, and I won't name names, but one of the other fellow speakers, we did like a roundtable at the end, and somebody asked a similar question to that. I can't remember the exact question, but I basically said, your training should be fun. You know, that is the art of coaching, but fun is different for different people. You know, somebody that's like a kettlebell sport athlete that's used to doing, you know, massive amounts of repetition all the time, that design of that fun and that exciting mantra is going to be different to somebody who's never really done any training before, or a 10-year-old or something like that. So, but the other speaker had obviously had made a point in their presentation of sort of saying it's not about being fun. And he kind of said, we don't use the F word, you know, and he sort of said it tongue in cheek. And it didn't really go much further than that. But the years that have gone by, the more I've reflected on that, thinking that's not the right way. You have got to make your sessions engaging to the people that you're working with. It doesn't matter if they are the best athlete that's ever walked the earth, or if they've never done a session. You have got to lay down something that's a bit different every now and again, that's a bit stupid, maybe a bit fun. And even if it's just 2 or 3 minutes here or there, you've got to get that into your session to get longevity.
Yeah.
I really do believe it, Steve.
Yeah, and that is where the art of the coaching comes in. And like you say, understanding what keeps people motivated, what people enjoy. It's giving people what they need as well as what they want. But like you say, we use it all the time, don't we? You've got some MMA athletes who it's the worst session in the world if they don't leave in a pile of their own sweat and they don't feel like they're about to vomit. You know, that's fun to them. You know, you've got hardcore bodybuilders. Yes, they're on a grind and stuff, but actually the fun for them is the end product. It's the looking big on stage and actually tapping into that grueling, hard, sadistic sessions that they all. It's always on a bandwidth. It's always on a sliding scale, and it's your job as a coach to understand that. You know,
absolutely.
It's just about playing games and stuff like that. In that sense, you know, it's about tapping in and finding out what fun is relevant to that individual. 100%.
And guys, if you're listening in and you've got any questions on general training, preparation, physical preparation, it could be for a sport, a specific sport, it could be a certain type of client, type them in and we'll bring them up on the screen. But a key point for me though, and you touched on it before, Steve, is that we're not just throwing stuff out there. We're not just doing random stuff here. There is a really clear structure through your general preparation work. And that's critical here. You've got to be able to track and measure things so that you know that you've improved and you know that you've got a reference point of where you're looking to go. So that's something that's really, really important. And your structure through all of your programming has to be solid. Again, when you look at, if this was a presentation on what do the best coaches in the world all do, programming and quality structure to take someone on a journey is one of those elements. And not just programming, but progression as well, Steve. You know, like, and that's what someone like Kelvin is just elevated globally, because his progressions, his movements through a journey are so well structured. And it doesn't mean that you're moving away from fun. It's actually more engaging because of that structure.
Yes.
Instead of just putting, say, weight on the bar and going up and up and up in weight and load, you can make complexity in movements come in there. You can manipulate tempo and speed and so on and so forth. And so that's how you've got, I mean, in my gym in Leeds, you know, we had, say, 400 athletes and general population coming through that every week. And very often there'd be 30 plus people in at the same time. But the key point here is that there was basketballers doing their programs, netballers doing their programs, general population. Then we had track and field athletes, a few MMA fighters. And the point is, if you looked at that from the corner as a coach and you wandered around, everybody's doing similar things, but there's so many different body types there. And you can have a beginner, an intermediate, and advanced all doing a squat pattern. One's doing a goblet squat with the heels elevated. Somebody else is doing front squats, and somebody else is doing eccentric back squats with a 2-second pause, you know, exploding out the bottom, for example. And that's the critical piece here, is progression and programming. And funnily enough, you know, it'd be good to get your thoughts as well. But when I've worked with mentored coaches and worked with them over long periods of time, that's the progression is the key thing that people struggle with the most there.
Yeah,
because it's easier to stick more weight on the bar.
Yeah, absolutely.
To go down that path as progression. We don't challenge ourselves enough to increase the breadth. You know, the classic, you know, the wider the base, the higher the peak.
Yeah.
But we keep that base narrow and try and build it that way. And it's not going to build a robust athlete with longevity, is it?
No. And when I look at like progressive overload, there's loads of different ways that I look at it. So you kind of go from stable to unstable. I'm not saying jump on BOSU balls and stuff like that. I'm saying you could have front dumbbell squat, then just uneven loaded, you know. You've got the tempos, which we talk about. You've got the density, so the amount you're going to squeeze in, reducing the rest periods, the speed of the bar. I think that's one of the biggest things. And I heard Eric Cressy say it the other day as well, is actually, instead of just chasing kilos all the time, chase the velocity. And again, that's something that you can measure. You know, if you set your athlete, right, you've got 10 reps with 40 kilos on your back. I want you to move as fast as you can for these 10 reps. I'm going to time you on the stopwatch. Great. If you've got push bands, you'll get that data even more so. But it's all measurable and it's all enjoyable because the athlete is engaged in trying to push themselves even further and trying to beat that. So when it comes to that, the weight trap, it's right. How do you manipulate it in loads of different ways, which allows them to master the basic techniques and the fundamental movements, but gives them the biggest bang for buck further down the line. You know, at the end of the day, your return on investment on a back squat doesn't stop until you get 2 times body weight. Not many people out there, their standard is 2 times body weight. So why do we feel we need to move away from that sort of stuff and being able to do full push-ups and 10 reps of body weight chin-ups and then starting to add a little bit more load or pauses and stuff like that, you know? We just seem to want to go to do this and then we're going to go into some fancy drills, you know?
Some really good questions coming in, Steve.
Really good.
You know, good comment here from Maria. always trying to make it exciting as well as engaging and for purpose. Otherwise, people wouldn't look forward to the session. And that's a great point, because if you challenge yourself, and this is a tough challenge to meet, don't get me wrong, but if you challenge yourself to make your clients drive in to your session exciting, and by that there could be there's some trepidation there. There could be a fear and excitement on a spectrum as well. But if you challenge yourself, that you say, I don't just want to make the session exciting, I want to make their drive to the gym, their journey in, exciting. I want the kids telling their mum and dad in the car what they're going to be doing or what they're looking forward to. I want the commuter after their long day at work to be thinking, okay, I wonder what Steve's got in store for me tonight, or what does that look like? You know, that's a really good challenge as a coach to think, set yourself the higher standard there off the back of that. Because if the link between that psychological preparation and then going through the session and then the subsequent adaptation that you get and the longevity that you can have with those clients that ultimately unlocks further results for them, you know, just think about the power of that for a second, Steve. Like, that's what we need to be doing here. That's how you're going to get truly transformational results, not by putting people through the same drills on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, and let's look at it like from even from a scientific point of view, just so it's not like, oh, it's a bit fluffy and everything else as well. So look, let's look at motivation and let's tie it back to self-determination theory. Everybody should really kind of know that theory around coaching now, but it's that competency piece, isn't it? And the autonomy of being able to chase that. If you can enhance that and somebody keeps on developing bit by bit by bit, and that competency piece takes over and they're owning the training process, they're going to be more motivated. If you're working with youth athletes, it's going to retain them in sport for longer. If you're working with your general population clients, they're going to stay motivated to keep coming back because they can see the progressive steps. And that's why we're not saying just variety for variety's sake, but because people can't really track if they've improved or not. So there needs to be those themes, but linking it back, but also looking at what Maria's just said there, that exciting proposition, that bit of nerves there. Once somebody achieves something, they get a dopamine release off the back of it because they've achieved the outcome, or it's anticipation of the outcome. Yeah. So that's why you feel good and excited when you go into the gym. And that's what you should be striving for as a coach, if you want to add some science to it. And that's theoretically what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And good question here from Nicki. Olympic weightlifting, long sessions. What's the best bang for buck general prep movements for hip and shoulder activation and stability? And Olympic weightlifting sessions can be long sessions, but they don't have to be long sessions. And I think that's the key point. So, you can get value from 5 sets of 2 power snatch, and then you're out the gym. 5 sets of 2, and then into some basic strength movements, and again you're out. So there's a myth behind that long sessions. I know that a lot of people train for a long time in those environments, but the point is, it doesn't have to be, Steve, does it?
No. So I think I use my training as an example now. So I'm kind of just trying to work on my hang clean. Not a lot of time. I'm surfing the curve, hang clean, it's straight into full variation, dropping into the bottom of the squat. It is just a real big bang for buck exercise for me. But typically what I've got is 10-15 minutes of movement prep, and obviously warming up and everything else like that. And then the actual session itself is 6 sets of 3 if we're on a kind of a strength speed or a speed strength day, and it's on the minute every 2 minutes, and it's 6 sets. So theoretically what we're doing is it's at the top of every 2 minutes, that's when we go again. So it roughly takes around about 90 seconds rest in between there and thereabouts. But that's a chunk of my session. And then afterwards, it's ab work, ab rollouts, barbell side bends, and then leg lowers. And then that's my session done for that. And I think looking at what's the best bang for buck for general prep for the hip, shoulder activation and stability, just nail your overhead squats. I think if you want to get good, I think it was actually you and Fish went into a session once, wasn't it, Brian? I remember you saying, right, we're going to warm up and we're going to do 30 Hindu push-ups and 30 overhead squats. And by the end of it, Fish was like, "Mate, this is a workout. I'm done here." Or somebody, I don't know if it was Fish. So apologies, Fish, if I'm doing you a disservice there. But that's it. It's getting really, really good at mastering those basics and spending a lot of time, even with an unloaded bar. If you can do lots of repetitions with that, and that's theoretically what you're doing, we're going to warm up. You're laughing at me,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the overhead squat for what those three things there that you've said, Nicki, hip, shoulder, and stability generally, cannot go wrong with nailing your overhead squat. And again, where does that start and end? You can load the overhead squat, but you don't have to. You could go down a offset weight. You can have a 5 on one and a 10 on the other. Try that for stability and activation, and do 10 or 15 reps on each side, and then switch it round. Obviously, you could go with holding the dumbbell overhead and doing single arm overhead squats. It's not about how do we load and move this exercise up in terms of progressive overload. It's about variety. And I mean, there's so many ways you can go with that. Hips, I've always done mini band walks, things like that for glute med and that whole glute complex. I'm not a big fan of Bosu ball stuff, but actually done a lot of overhead squats on the Bosu ball, just with an empty bar. Just getting for that exact reason, to get activation, stability in somebody's extended warm up, and unlock the movement for them a little bit. And actually, what you find is people, contrary to what you might think, people actually quite often move better on the Bosu ball than they do without one, because the Bosu ball tilts forward and acts a bit like a heel raise with that. So it actually lets you drop into that deep overhead squat nicely, as well as giving you some activation and all that kind of stuff too. But interesting one, Nicki, you made that point about long sessions in relation to competitive weightlifters. Absolutely right. How about you throw in a really short session? How is that going to be engaged? How different would that be, where you go from doing a 90-minute, 120-minute weightlifting session, and then randomly, every now and again, you throw in a kind of, guys, all we're going to do today is warm up and go to 5 sets of 2 power snatches, and then 5 sets of 2 cleans, and then get out the gym, or whatever that might be. 5 sets of 2 snatch into 6 sets of 2 squats, go home. Nothing more than that. It's going to break things up, isn't it? It's going to break the pattern. People are going to be thinking, what happened? Why are we out of here in 40 minutes instead of an hour and 40 minutes, All of these things just keep people thinking, don't they, off the back of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at the world powerhouses in Olympic weightlifting and try and replicate what they do, so they can get the most out of it. Great comment from there, Ray. But
classic great comment, that, Steve, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
With your body weight, Ray, you should be banging out sets of 25 pull-ups.
Oh shit, mate, that's it. He just needs to put down the can on the weekend so he can get the pull-ups. He's doing one-arm pull-ups. That's his progression too soon.
Exactly.
But I think a lot of people try and replicate what the Russians do, what the Chinese do. You know, these world powerhouses, and you got to remember, okay, what's preceded that, what's gone before that, and actually their general base phase has been going on for 10, 15, 20 years. And if you come into Olympic weightlifting later in life, mobility, timing, coordination under the bar. So a lot of people say, well, I need to work on my mobility. I need to work on my coordination. I need to do this, this, and this. And they try and cram it into this one session when actually there's too many adaptations trying to occur there. So it's how do you do the minimal effective dose to transfer over and keep that going? So possibly you can get more volume through higher frequency of training. I know for me, anything north of an hour session just wipes me out. Yeah. But so what I have to do is I train frequently. I train 6 to 12 times a week. Now, it's not go hard, go home all the time, you know, all out on that. No. It's I have to play that frequency game. And I think sometimes if you're finding your Olympic weightlifters, and there's loads of context here, guys, you know, but I think that's where you've got to try and play that game of I don't want to cram everything in, but do I have more frequency? I'll go that way. Or do I don't have frequency, so I'll make 3 longer sessions, you know. It's all about playing about with that, you know.
Great question here from Paul. The great thing about this, Steve, is it blocks me and you out the screen.
Yeah, exactly, mate.
So, Paul, the session is yours now, Elton. This is a really good question. How do you possibly ensure that you create fun, engaging, and varied sessions each and every time when you're just starting out on your coaching journey, especially if you start out on your own and don't get to work and learn alongside a more experienced coach? I remember Steven Gerrard talking about the importance of him working with the Liverpool under-21s as a coach before embarking on his first managerial role with Rangers, his team. It worries me in thinking that I need to reserve. Okay. So let's tackle this one then, Steve, because I think it's really relevant, and it doesn't just relate to young people as such. But the first thing is Paul mentions about, you know, on your own. Well, that it can be challenging and it can be a lonely place, and that's why you want to be in a coaching network. You want to bounce ideas off people and so on. So, you know, that's something to address straight away, and that's what we're trying to do here. But actually, the point I'd make is you're never on your own because you're coaching somebody else. And the key thing here is to communicate. No one here is a mind reader. And that means you've got to ask questions and listen to the answers. And so your place to start is with a conversation. And if you look at our coaching forms, our initial assessment forms, and I think, you know, that's something we might talk about on a future session, because we're looking at bringing the functional assessments and sort of the psychological coaching element into something for you guys. But if you look at what we ask, you know, one of the key questions I always ask is, what type of training do you enjoy and why? And what type of training do you not enjoy and why? That's on a form, but that can be in a conversation. And you want to get a baseline of where your client, group, athlete, whatever it may be, has been, and is that working? Because it makes total sense. If you have a conversation with somebody and they say, you know, I don't like doing X, Y, and Z. I really like doing A, B, and C. I've not been enjoying my training for the last 6 months, and that's because I've been doing this, that, and the other. Then first things first, you can say, right, we're not doing any of that then, you know, or we're going to do that in a different way. So, you know, the key thing here, Paul, is that you converse and communicate with the people that you're working with, that you're serving, And over time, you'll get better, not just as a coach, but with that client or that group, when you get to know them a bit better and what makes them tick. So you can challenge yourself. You're not going to get that. So the key point of your question, how do you create fun, engaging, and varied sessions each and every time? You're not going to hit that metric each and every time. Just challenge yourself to get to know the person better and think about what is going to excite them on their drive into work. What do I need to put in front of them in that way, whilst still having a structure to follow of, you know, pushing, pulling, hinging, rotating, bracing, squatting, so on and so forth, the endurance, the metabolic component. What's your 2 cents on that, Steve?
So, you know, first and foremost, when you're getting started or in your journey and stuff like that, first and foremost, well done. You're being brave, you're getting it done. And I think ultimately understand that you're not chasing perfection, you know, just go back to the principles of what it is you're trying to do. And varied sessions, they don't need to be massively, one program doesn't need to be saying, right, well, I've done that session once, we never do it again. It's about the themes. Your session could be completely different. The first 10 and the last 10 minutes of a session. The rest of the 40 minutes in the middle could be following exactly the same structure as it did previously. But typically, the way the human brain works, it remembers the first and the last 10 minutes of a session. Because the last 10 minutes, if you have a bit of fun, bit of conditioning games, mirror drills and stuff like that as a final max effort type stuff, that's the way you can keep it varied. Your warm-ups, you could use loads of different ball drills. You know, if you're working, argument's sake, volleyball with an underhand throw, use a med ball over the goalpost is a good one as well. There's loads of different ways to vary it, but go back to the principles of what am I trying to achieve here? And if it's actually I'm raising core temperature, building a bit of awareness and having a bit of fun and engagement, then be creative. If you're trying to get a specific stimulus on the body, then just make sure that you don't deviate too far from that. And the fun element can be a mixture of loads of different ways of bringing it in. It could be against the clock, it could be praise, all of these different things, you know. I think that's kind of the key things. And the final bit is you're going to get it wrong. That's fine. I mean, mate, if I went back and looked at some of my first coaching sessions and just sort of looked back, I'd be going, what on earth were you doing there? What did you do? That was awful. We all remember that session where kids ran riot or adults just didn't have a clue what they were doing and it just didn't flow. Nature of the beast. Don't chase perfection because you're working with human beings. It's not perfect.
No, that's a good point. And don't forget what we're not saying here, and I want to be really, really clear, is we are not saying that the entirety of every session is fun and games and play. That's just not the case at all. That there might be a much greater emphasis on that with young people, for example, but engagement is the key. Excitement and engagement, they're the two words. Well, that doesn't mean games. That might mean that you're going for 5 RMs this week. And we need some repetition, clearly. So in the course of a phase of training, you're engaged with the concept of hitting bigger numbers at certain times. But you can also be engaged with moving the bar faster, with doing more reps in a certain time period, with running a distance in a shorter time, with something. You get me? So it's thinking about what does engaging and exciting look like for my population, my people. And of course, you need to get under that bar and grind some things out from time to time. But that's a component of what we're doing here. That's the key point.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve, go on.
No, I was just saying absolutely, and I think it links into what I was just going to say. Answer Danny's question there is: can a youth athlete be a well-rounded athlete, or is this more towards experienced athletes? Youth athletes absolutely not can 100% should be well-rounded athletes. Should is the optimal word for me, because they should have a big base. They should have well-rounded physical literacy. They should have exposure to sprinting, jumping, rolling, falling, all of these different things, loads of upper body strength, because ultimately it's so they can harness all of these physical qualities to then distill them down into the final piece of the puzzle when they come to do their sport specific later in life. Let's look at some of the best GB athletes or some of the best footballers out there. You know, some of them started off as just general athletes. Some of them started off as sprinters. You know, Gabby Abonglahor, you may like him, you may not, but was a really, really talented 100-meter and 200-meter sprinter. You know, there's loads and loads of scenarios like that, but we always want to idolize the people who just, when he was 2 years old, he had a ball at his feet and he just played tappy once against the wall all the time, and then that was it. So yeah, but how many failed stories have you got there? If somebody is well-rounded athlete, they might not make it in their sport. Sport is brutal. It's a brutal business. You are one injury away from never being able to do that sport. But if you're a well-rounded athlete, i.e. you've got good physical literacy, you're set up for a good quality of life. And that's the one thing that we can't take our eyes away from. People talk about, athleticism and this, but that's to prepare you for life. Because if you're athletic and you've got good levels of athleticism, slips, trips, and falls get minimized. Injuries, longevity increases, reduced chances of illnesses, muscular strains and sprains all get reduced with higher levels of athleticism. Yeah. So that's the first and foremost is, right, okay, where does sport start and health and well-being? Well, the athlete needs to be healthy first and foremost. So for a youth athlete, they should 100% be a well-rounded athlete. Experienced athletes have took general athleticism and applied it to a specific skill set, which has took them to the top of their sport. And I think that's what we've got to look at. It's the pyramid once again. The elite is at the very, very top. We need to spend a lot of time down here, because then they can extrapolate all of these physical qualities when they get to the top of the pyramid. It doesn't work the other way around. Just doesn't. It just falls down. Injuries, demotivation, burnout, all of these things time and time again. That's my point on that question. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Brendan.
Yeah, no, it's well said. And with young people, the goal is really not even about athlete. You could delete the word athlete and say, do you want young people to be well-rounded? No. Yeah. So it's about discipline. It's about following instructions. It's about being a part of a process, being educated, life skills. But the funny thing is, how do you get to that outcome? You've got to have them turning up and be excited and get engaged and they get results. And that's the cycle here. If you make your sessions all about barking orders and discipline is important, you actually achieve the opposite effect. They rebel against that. They don't come back, and you haven't given them life skills. So this is where you can. I think it's important to judge development of the person and the athletic skill, let's say, over a longer period of time, and say, isn't that program amazing? Those young people, those athletes, if you want to call them that, those kids are still going after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. They still remember those drills when they finished that session 3 years ago. That's a great program. That's what it's about with young people. So, great question. I'm glad you asked it. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a really good one. And as you can tell, me and Brendan are super passionate about working with youth athletes. It's something Brendan did for years and years and years and still does. And you've got the girls badminton or tennis players that you coach from like 9 years old, and And you got to remind them how old you are when you went to their 21st birthday party, wasn't it? And stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that 7 and 9 they were when I first started working with them. And on a performance pathway, very talented sisters. And, started off doing tennis stuff on the tennis court. But within a few years, probably even a few months, we were doing, light loaded kettlebells and certain sprint drills. And then it moved into Olympic weightlifting and plyometrics and heavy load resistance training. And now they're in their 20s and they're property developers. And that's how it ends. And that's great. But they know how to squat and they know how to train. And that's, I believe, the mark of a good quality program and ultimately the commitment from the athlete client as well. But they're not going to have committed to that if they had a terrible time, know. And 15 years later, they're still training. So that's what it's about, isn't it?
Absolutely. You see the scary stats, and I think the youth side of things will be probably a different different ECL, because we could go on for that. So, guys, obviously we've been chatting about developing good levels of general athleticism, and I think a lot of times it's very easy to get distracted and say, well, what is that? And it goes back to your philosophy, but I think it's about shining a light on going back to the basics and actually understanding it's not just doing a circuit for a couple of weeks and then you start going into the specific prep phase. It's about building a wide range of skills. So with that in mind, guys, this weekend there's a flash sale on free incredible resources, and I say that all the time every time I put stuff up, but that's why I work for SCE, because the content we have and we put out there is geared towards serving the coaching community. It's not just about, you get this course, you get this qualification or accreditation, and then you've instantly you're going to start working with elite athletes. It's not that. It goes far beyond that. So the resource that I'm talking about here is reasonableness. Now, if you do not watch this and become a different coach by the end of it, in terms of just seeing things through a different lens and process information in a different way, me personally, I'll give you your money back, because at the end of the day, the content in here will just start to think about, how do you know what you know? Why do you do what you do? Where's your biases come from? What does this why do you do it this way? How are you going to train to get the most effectiveness out of this, and this? It's an absolutely incredible resource, and it'll be one that you'll want to go back to time and time again. So I really would recommend checking that out. And obviously, that's by Dan John, the Lifetime Achievement Award at the recent SCE Awards. And if you haven't seen that interview, check it out. It's a phenomenal one. So in the next bit, and I think this one will link back to what Paul was saying before, actually, and how do you get varied sessions? I don't want to distract away from what I'm trying to achieve, but I still want to keep them varied, and I still want to have excitement within my program, but I'm not sure where to start. This is where right here, right now will be for you. Okay, so you're going to have lots of different ideas on how you're going to develop good movements, from lateral based movements, body weight movements, to then start bringing them together into metabolic circuits, how you're going to structure them within a program. Lots and lots of great content in there. So if you are thinking, I just need a few ideas for my variety, but also how am I going to structure it to get my core workout in, then check out right here, right now. And then the final one, this is kind of decades and decades of experience in building the complete athlete. So it's about breaking down each part of what goes into making a well-rounded, great, high-performing athlete. Okay, so if you want to really break down into the little aspects of, well, why do we jump? Why do we move the way we move? Why do we do the things we do? Okay, and that's where building the complete athlete will come in. So some great resources there, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the link into the comment section. keep an eye out for your emails as well. So they'll be with you very, very shortly. This is only for this weekend, so make sure that you grab those. If you've got any questions about them, you can reach out to us as well. But some fantastic resources there. I'm not going to ask Brendan to say how great they are, because of course he's going to say they're great. He's not going to turn around and say they're absolutely terrible, is he?
They're terrible. Now, look, it's I think that the key point for me, though, off the back of this session we've done this morning, is there's a lot there, guys. And when we talk about variety, but also having structure, when we talk about programming and progression, there's a lot there to get your heads around. And so, you know, don't worry if you feel a little bit overwhelmed or so on by that. The resources that we're putting in front of you will really clear a lot of that up. They're really comprehensive. I think there's 17 videos in Building the Complete Athlete. There's 8 or 9 hours of footage in that, and also the reasonableness. And reasonableness is such an inspiring video, as is Building the Complete Athlete, but reasonableness, really, really inspiring. Dan John, you know, it says it all. Right here, right now is one of my resources. It's terrible. No, it's one of those that will give you a bigger toolbox, shall we say? Just lots more things in there, but also it's linked to a clear structure. So do this stuff in this part of the session, this stuff in this part of the session, and this is how you move through. So yeah, enjoy them, guys, and no doubt I believe they'll make you better coaches, but most importantly, your commitment to making yourself a better coach is really what this is all about. So, you know, appreciate everybody's attention and time this morning, and we'll be back again soon, Steve, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Some great chats coming up over the coming weeks, guys. So make sure you join us every Friday. If you can't watch this live, make sure you just save the video, comment on it, and you can come back to it and watch it on replay. But as always, guys, it's up to you. Go out there, make it happen. Have a great one, and have a great weekend, Brendan, as well, mate.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Steve.